when you're moving from place to place.
It is 7:20 a.m. and welcome back, viewers and listeners. This is the Tobago Updates morning show coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. As we continue the conversation this morning, we have the opportunity to speak with Atiba Martin, a manager engineering unit at the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development. Morning to you, good sir.
Good morning, Julian. Good morning to all the viewers and listeners.
I'm not sure if are you into the Carnival festivities?
Not really. I'm more pan guy traditionally, but I don't really participate in the other activities. But
Right,
I do follow what's happening.
So does that mean you're excited by the outcome of the results last night?
Yes. It was a good competition.
All right.
And yeah.
Excellent indeed, man. But this morning, I have no fear, viewers. No, Atiba is not on to talk about steel pan and the carnival. This morning, we are chatting in relation to upcoming projects for the Division of Infrastructure. As we have seen over the period, quite naturally within the last period of time with the start of this new administration, a number of projects have been implemented within the Tobago space, some of which by force because of nature, as has been the case. So this morning we'd like to get an idea and a sense in terms of what are some of the projections that we can anticipate going forward in relations to upcoming projects.
All right. Well, I want to start with looking at all of the programs that we have basically earmarked for quarter 3 of fiscal 2022 to 2023. We are just on the end of the second quarter, so we're kind of looking ahead here. First, I want to start off by talking about the Community-Based Infrastructure Program, CBIP, which was launched in 2021 at the end of the last administration. And so we're now moving into the next batch of projects that we want to dispersed throughout the 15 electoral districts in Tobago. So we want to do about 30 of those. The current 60, thereabout, those are more or less winding down, closing. Some of the contractors are just awaiting final payments. So we are ready to move into the next phase of that program. Of course, those programs are for maximum value, $250,000 and down. The next area which we want to focus on going forward here is what we consider emergency works that would have precipitated as a result of the heavy precipitation that we received and with the rains in the rainy season last year. As you know, a number of infrastructural challenges would have emerged when we had those rains. And we have come up with a listing of projects that we would have to treat with in the wake of those infrastructural challenges. And we want to start off with two that we consider to be the highest priority. And those are the Castara Northside Road, which we have already started. We have currently brought it down to a stage where it's motorable, traffic could pass, but we want to take it to the next stage. And designs for those are complete. We're just waiting on the materials and the different resources to come together to actually start the execution. The other project, high priority, is the Bad Rock in Bell Garden. As you know, we had a very dramatic failure there. And so what we have done, we have outsourced that one to a design consultant to do the designs. By the way, the Castara one was designed in-house. And the Bad Rock Bell Garden project is going to be outsourced, and hopefully within a month or so, we should start the actual execution of the works, which would as well be done in-house.
Tell me something before you go on to the other projects. You've been involved, this is your area of expertise, as an engineer for a number of years. Forces of nature. Would you say that this is probably the first time in a long while we are dealing with these kinds of responses where we are you're forced to ensure that you respond, even if it may not have been on your initial lineup to be treated with immediately? For example, you're looking at what took place in the north side area.
Yes.
We hear the talks all the time, the issues of global warming and different things. Tell us from your engineering perspective, is this kind of a little bit out of the norm that you're forced to respond to?
Definitely. I think what happened was a perfect storm. We had the confluence of poor infrastructure that, We had the extreme rainfall, no doubt, lack of maintenance, and it just so happened that all of those things came together in that rainy season last year.
All right. So far you have touched on the community areas that you'd see they roll out in the 15 electoral district. Two are the priority areas that would be treated with in terms of the north side as well as the Bad Rock area. So you go ahead, tell us about some of the others that we can anticipate for this period.
Hanging down in Roxborough. There's also the Bloody Bay, Roxborough Road. There's a major field that's been there for years that is on the cusp of probably having a major failure and cutting off that road. So we definitely have to treat with that. That's a major tourist road, leisure. People who want to visit the famous Tobago Reserve, Forest Reserve there, you basically would have to go on that road. So while it's not a busy road, it's an essential road in that context. So
that's the connector one going back around by the Roxborough High School there to take you. Okay.
That's right, yeah.
In terms of making the connection in that area. Tell us a little bit about what would be the scope in terms of some of these areas, because I know we look broadly at the scope, the planning and execution as part of your mechanism for the work that you do. Just give us a sense as to how do you arrive at these or come up with these, because sometimes these things end up in the political sphere and one almost thinks that things are being pulled out of a hat. Give us a sense, coming up with things like the scope for these, planning the project and so on. What's that kind of rollout like at the division?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, the scope is really driven by what the problem is. When we go out, we investigate, we determine, what the problem is when it comes with solutions. And I don't believe that, it's a fair thing to think that it's just pulled out of the hat. I think a lot of the jobs that we embark on are because of problems that we see in the communities. And also there are projects that are embarked upon for strategic reasons, meaning that, you see opportunity and those are usually the larger ones, like, this whole Scarborough redevelopment and the port and all of those things. Those are strategic projects. But for the most part, projects that are conceptualized in the division are developed from what we observe, problems that we see in the communities that sometimes, we have requests for assistance. That's a huge area where projects come to the division and we look at them, we send engineers out to investigate them. And then when they come up with the solutions, management decides on a priority on which ones that we do. So in terms of coming up with a scope, I would say that that's how we go about it.
All right. You just mentioned in relation to the Scarborough, and that was one of the roads delivered within a short time frame in terms of making that connection. Any plans in relation in this upcoming period to deal with works within the Scarborough area?
Yes. As I said last time I was here, those projects are part of what I consider to be connecting of roads in Tobago, in Scarborough, which is a natural progression. And to continue in that vein, we want to look specifically at the Wilson Road, Dutch Fort, Gardenside intersection. And we have our traffic management unit looking into that and the possibility of doing a blinking flashing light, street light there, and possibly being able to move from Dutch Fort straight onto Gardenside Street so that you could get up into upper Scarborough. Presently, what you have there is kind of an unnatural kind of movement. I mean, it may be the best thing right now, but the hope is that it could evolve into something that is more natural, which is to move as you come out from places like Smithfield, the schools, and so on.
Yes.
You could get straight up into Scarborough rather than go on Milford Road or hit the highway. You have that alternative. You could, as I like to say, if you are in E-Tech Mall, which is a major destination in Scarborough, and say you want to go to Martino's Mall, you should be able to make that traverse easily.
To be able to treat with that as easily as
rather
possible.
than going through Milford Road or going on the highway and coming around. Some of these routes are not very, convenient. So we're trying to, the whole idea behind connecting the roads in town is to improve the convenience of traveling.
As we speak about Scarborough and you related to any considerations for that Sangster Hill area as well. I know there has been that age-old challenge in relation to the Pentecostal school that's there, and then the indications were in the past when efforts were made, the recognition that that's actually private property in that area. Any considerations for there? I know they've spoken about roads possibly connecting that's on the Bishop side. And this is just the layman's view, seen a road that look close to an open space of land. Any considerations, or that has not been investigated as yet?
It is being talked about. It is we haven't gotten down into the fine details of looking at it, but it is definitely on the radar. I would say yes.
All right. So tell us, in terms of any other projects that you'd like to be able to highlight for us in terms of information for the upcoming period?
Yes. They may not be physical projects for some of them, but they're definitely happening behind the scenes. Scarborough, we want to get into a routine maintenance program for Scarborough, and that will be executed by the road maintenance section. We've received the interim report for the Scarborough Redevelopment Master Plan, and that is currently being reviewed. And thirdly, we're on record as saying that we want to embark on the underground utility corridor.
Right.
We're still waiting on. I just want to give an update on that. We're still waiting on seeking the IDB funding from the Ministry of Planning. So funding, I would say, is one of the constraints that we have on that. I mentioned the Dutch Fort. I want to speak a little bit about the Coastal Zone Management Unit. We recently, last week, received the inception report from Smith Warner International, where the consultants looking into the upgrade of the Milford Bay Pigeon Point rehabilitation, all that, coastal erosion issues that they have down there.
Right.
And just briefly, it's still in the infancy stages, but briefly I could say that one of the findings coming out of that study was that a lot of the infrastructure that we put there were poorly done, or they're not suitable. So some of the choices that we made there. So part of the intervention going forward is to do some beach vegetations, a little thing called a vegetated sand dune to help boost the sand stock that we have down there that we currently losing. But definitely, a lot of the problems were encountered because the infrastructure was poor, and I'm talking about the breakwaters and the groins and what have you, were poorly selected. So we have some improvements to make there.
So this area we're talking about, for those who visit regularly enough, this looks at the forefront area there, the jetty coming around in Pigeon Point itself.
Yes, it starts from the Buku Reef,
right,
and coming around all the way to
end,
Sandy Point, Swallows, all those areas.
Okay, because
that entire area study.
What we have found that in recent times, I actually had myself went down there with some friends and was saying, wow, I haven't seen this in all my years, where the water appears to almost be reaching up by what would have been naturally some of the cabana spaces in the area. So you said you're looking at the beach, what do you call it, beach vegetation?
Yeah.
As well as the sand.
Vegetated sand dunes, like a sand dune in the Sahara, picture that?
Right.
And you just have vegetation on top of it. So I guess to make it more stable. So that, because the problem is of course erosion, as the longshore drift, and as the water moves across that area, you're getting the erosion. So what you want is to stabilize the beachfront. And these are some of the things that they're recommending in the short term. But also there's more to come, because they have to then move into the preliminary design and feasibility. So there's a lot to come on that project, that area in general.
All right. Because you said that's still very much within its infancy stage.
Yes. more on coastal management, we recently went to the Roxborough Argyle district and we looked at the Kendall Bay, and there's some significant erosion taking place there, affecting some of the residents who are living close on the coast. And so that is an area we want to look at, definitely from a design standpoint, because we're seeing that the rock revetments and the seawalls that were built are failing and exacerbating the problem. So we want to start with looking at the design solutions for that, seeing where we went wrong and improve that situation there.
Would you say, looking at some of the challenges that are faced over time, as an engineer again, based on your expertise and area of study, would you say that some of these things have naturally, what we describe as outlived their time? Sometimes you're dealing with a house and you say over a number of years, if you don't have the right maintenance plan in place, it will start to come in on you, so to speak. A number of these areas where we see challenges based on, I suppose, what was the technologies and the expertise available then versus some of the advancements now. Would you say that we're kind of facing that period as well, where some of these things have naturally done their time and even there's greater advancements now to help to do even better?
Yeah, definitely. Some of these infrastructure have done their time, basically. Typically, 50 years is the design life for most infrastructure. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't do better, because I could tell you, if you go up Bloody Bay, Roxborough, you look at the infrastructure, there's some of the walls and so on, and they're dated since the 50s, and they're still functional, still looking good, still functioning well. But certainly, yes, some of our infrastructure are old and have done their time, and they need to be replaced.
All right. Before we wrap this morning's interview, there's a quick question coming in. I don't know if it's something that can be considered if it isn't already under consideration. Will there be an evaluation of the lane logic for the corners at Market Square and Spence Plaza? So I want to suspect currently 2 lanes turning into the ambiguous single lane. So if I am reading this question correctly, I suspect this is the area around that market car park. Yes, in front of the okay, remember that's an opposite size kind of drive. Any considerations to review there or to evaluate whether or not that is working? The one of our viewers is asking that question.
I would say yes, and that would be in the larger context of the Scarborough redevelopment master plan, because traffic routing and optimization is a big part of the objective in that study and that initiative. Because as you would appreciate, if we have to develop Scarborough, there's going to be a demand on traffic.
Yes.
So the solution has to be, working out a proper traffic management plan and routing and maneuvers in Scarborough.
All right. Final, before we close, anything else you'd like to share before we wrap this morning's interview?
I would just like to see, the Turpin Bend in Charlottesville. I recall, people lost their lives in that era, so it hasn't gone forgotten. We have reached out to UDCUT with a view to resuming discussions on the alternatives that they gave us. So we look forward to continuing with that. So that is one project that was a high-profile project that seemed to have kind of gone quiet, but I just want to say that it's not. And basically, yes, that's what the major projects and programs that we're looking at in the next fiscal quarter.
All right, certainly a number of areas being highlighted here. And the good thing is Atiba Martin, Manager Engineering Unit, he's certainly not afraid to return to provide the updates based on what the discussions have been along the way. We would have had preliminary discussions where he visited here, a few months ago, and coming back now to give a sense in terms of where things are at and the projections in terms of where they're heading towards. Thank you very much again, Atiba Martin, Manager Engineering Unit, Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, for joining us on set here this morning. Viewers, we want to continue to thank you very much for choosing us, the Tobago Updates morning show. And for each and every one of you connecting with us out there, those of you joining us online, yes, coming up next, we're moving from infrastructural work straight into pan, steel pan. We're going to be speaking to Duvon Stewart, a musician, panist, composer, and steel pan arranger. And this comes off of the high of just a few hours ago in terms of being out in Bacolod. All right, so viewers, we want to thank you so much for the continued love and support, and to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.